My daughter looked me dead in the eye across my own dining table and said the words that cracked something inside my chest. Dad, I want the beach house. Sign it over. It's basically mine anyway. Her tone wasn't a request, it was a command. And when I hesitated just for a moment, her husband leaned forward and added, "Do the smart thing, Samuel. Samuel, not Dad, not even Mr. Pierce. Samuel, like I was a stranger in my own family." I sat there staring at the people I once believed I'd die for, realizing they weren't asking for my home, they were planning my exit. So the next morning, I did something they never saw coming. And when they learned what I sold, and who I sold it to, their screams could have shattered glass. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Samuel Pierce. I'm 63 years old, and for most of my life I worked 2 jobs, missed holidays, and scraped every dollar together to build a future for my family. A future I thought they'd be grateful for. But what happened the night my daughter demanded our $4 million beach house showed me just how wrong I was, and what I did the next morning changed the rest of our lives forever. The salt air always used to calm me, not that night. Moonlight bounced off the water like 1,000 small lies. The beach house stood where I'd built it with my hands and stubbornness, 3 stories of cedar and memory. Inside, the chandelier threw fractured light across the dining table. My daughter sat at the head of it as if she owned a throne. Her name is Claire. She smiled like someone testing a blade. "Dad," she said, voice smooth as silk, "let's not be dramatic. You know it's time." Her husband, Derek, sat beside her. He folded his hands with an air of a man who'd practiced modesty in front of mirrors. "You don't have to make this hard," he added. "Just sign, it's paperwork." The words landed like splinters. I'd raised that girl, changed diapers until my thumbs cramped, sat up nights when the fever came, missed weddings, concerts, school plays because I chose to work another shift. And now she said the house was basically hers. I laughed at first because what else do you do when the floor drops away? "You're joking," I said. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "No, Dad, not joking." She leaned forward, the lamp catching the edge of a diamond on her finger. "We've talked. Your will is outdated. You own the title and the mortgage is cleared. It's time to transfer." My hand shook against my wine glass. "Transfer to whom?" "To us," Derek said flatly. "To Claire and me. We'll keep it in the family." "Why now?" My voice sounded small. Claire's gaze sharpened. "You told us it was for family," she said. "You told us it was for our future. We're ready, Dad, so be the man you taught us to be." There it was, the lesson I gave them, used like an instruction manual. "Family," I echoed. "Is this about the condos you want to rent out or Derek's new restaurant?" She smiled with a patience that was pure strategy. "It's both," she said. "You keep everything, cash accounts, investments. We'll take the house. You can move into the cottage." My throat tightened. The cottage, a boxy, cramped thing 2 miles up the coast, no ocean view, a place for someone who wants to forget the sea. I looked at the framed photograph on the mantel. Me and Claire on the pier, her hair in a wind-tangled mess, laughing because I'd nearly fallen overboard trying to catch a kite. I reached for that memory like a talisman. "You can't ask me to just sign away the house," I said. She blinked as if that were a quaint notion. "You already did, Dad," she said. I felt a cold thing unspool inside my chest. "What do you mean, did?" "We moved things," Derek said. "We updated the trust. We spoke with your lawyer. It's ready to close." "You went behind my back." "No," Claire said calmly. "We did what had to be done, for stability, for continuity, for the future." "Your future," I corrected. Her smile thinned. "It's our future too. But listen," Claire's voice softened. "Dad, you deserve someone who can look after everything properly. Not some old man struggling with stairs." The insult was a low blow. "You're talking to your father. You're astride the mortgage like a relic," Derek said. "You keep saying you want us secure, but you hoard the asset and hoard the risk." It wasn't just the words, it was the deliberate neatness of their cruelty, the way they'd rehearsed pity until it sounded like righteousness. I stood up slowly. My knees complained. Age had a voice now. "You think I'm incapable?" I asked. Claire's chin lifted. "I think you're set in your ways," she said, "and it's selfish." My hands curled into fists. The salt wind pressed at the windows like a spectator. "I worked for this house," I said. "Every night, every year, I paid for repairs. I kept the taxes. I've kept this family together." "You made sacrifices," Derek said, voice a careful cadence. and we are grateful, but gratitude isn't a plan. Plans are legal things, done, signed, executed. The room swam. What had begun as a family conversation descended into legalese and ledger lines. I tried to remember the last time I felt like a man with control. There was a flash, my palms raw from holding a hammer as I put up the rafters. All those nights on the roof, listening to the gulls. I'd built the house with my hands, not a ledger. They sat there, patient and sure. "You'll be comfortable in the cottage," Claire said. "We'll make sure everything's arranged. You'll still have the beachfront for walks. Still get dinner on Sundays." A slow, hollow phrase, "you'll be comfortable." Comfortable to them meant dismissed. Rebecca, my sister, had called before they came. She had said nothing, no voice of anger, no offer of support. It was quiet support of a different kind, the kind that didn't want to be involved in a mess. I looked at Derek. "You're telling me you've already done this without telling me." "We started steps," he corrected. "We consulted counsel. We made sure the paperwork is in order. We even discussed a gradual transition." "To push me out," I said. "That's not what we want," Claire said. "We want harmony, Dad, harmony." I tasted bile. "Who did you talk to?" I demanded. Derek smiled thinly. "Your lawyer, Anna, she's efficient." We also stopped at Bankson and Co. They began the title transfer review. "Monday, it'll be finalized." "Monday," I repeated. 3 days, Claire said. "By Tuesday morning, you can decide whether to sign. If you don't, legal instruments ensure the trust executes on its own." Words landed like a verdict. I felt my pulse in my throat. "How could you do that? How could you?" She cut me off. "Dad, we're giving you a chance to make it easy." Their hands were extended like a trap. I left the table before I could think. Outside on the deck, the ocean roared its patient truth. I breathed in the salt, and a plan started to take shape, slow like tide. Inside, voices continued like background static. "We only want to preserve the asset," Derek said, "for the next generation." Claire rested a hand on the place where her father's confidence once lived, my shoulder. "I just want what's right," she said. "Right." They believed they held moral high ground. They believed the law would be on their side. They didn't understand stubbornness. They didn't know what desperation looked like at night. I remembered the notary I'd once trusted. I remembered Anna, my lawyer, always precise, always polite. I walked back in and sat. "Okay," I said. Their faces relaxed. "You'll sign on Tuesday." I let the silence wrap around their relief. "Tuesday," I said, but inside something had shifted. Not defeat, not yet. It was calculation, the sort you learn when you build a house and repair its rotten joists. I had one night, one dark, small night to decide, and then the rest of my life would hinge on the morning that followed. I slept poorly. Dreams of hammering beams, my hands bloodied, of Claire's laugh echoing like a bell, and a single line flashed behind my eyes: "If they think I'll walk away, they have no idea." At dawn, I woke before anyone. I walked the long way to the study. I opened the safe. There, wrapped in oilcloth, were 2 sets of keys. One was for the beach house. The other, smaller, with a different tag, was for a property I'd never mentioned. An old investment, a house in a neighboring town, paid for under different names. The options unfurled. I held the keys until my knuckles ached. Outside, waves hit the shore in their old rhythm. Inside, a decision waited. I would not let them decide my fate for me. Not like this, not now. I called Anna. No answer. I called Bankson and Co. My call went to voicemail. I called the number Claire had given. It rang once, twice, then answered with a click. "Hello," a woman's voice, Bankson title. "How may I help you?" I swallowed. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Samuel Pierce. I need to speak about a title transfer." "Is this in regards to the Pierce Beach property?" she asked. My pulse accelerated. "Yes," I whispered. "Give me a moment," she said. On the table, the safe's lid reflected the dawn light. Outside, gulls cut the sky. Inside, I began to move pieces on the board, because if they believed the house was theirs for the taking, I intended to surprise them. The phone hummed, and then, in a voice that sounded like paper sliding under a door, the woman said 3 words that made my heart stop. "We've already closed." "The transfer is closed, Mr. Pierce." The words clanged in my ear like a dropped anchor. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "What do you mean closed?" I asked, my voice cracking. "No one can close a title transfer without the owner's signature." A long pause. Paper rustled on the other end. "Sir," the woman said carefully, "according to our file, your signature was provided." My stomach dropped through the floor. My signature when, yesterday afternoon, my breath left me. Yesterday, when Claire and Derek arrived early, when they insisted I review paperwork before dinner, when they handed me a stack of forms claiming they were estate updates and non-binding drafts, they must have slipped something in, something I didn't read, something I trusted without checking. I pressed my palm to my forehead as nausea crept up my throat. "Ma'am," I said, "I did not sign a title transfer." Another pause, a more careful one. "Would you like to file a fraud notice?" she asked. Fraud, the word felt wrong and heavy, like being asked if I wanted to press charges against my own blood. But before I could answer, she added, "You should also know there was a second transfer request processed this morning." My breath stuttered. "A second what?" "Yes, sir. A separate beach property under the Pierce family name. Someone attempted to initiate a joint transfer to your daughter as well." My heart slammed against my ribs. They hadn't just gone after the $4 million house. They went for the other one too, the one I never told anyone about. A smaller place, old but valuable, the one I purchased decades ago under an LLC for privacy, planned for retirement, a place I'd never yet brought a soul. "Who submitted that second transfer?" I whispered, a tremor in my voice. "It appears the request came from the same attorney, Anna Wilcox." My jaw tightened. Anna, my attorney. Claire had said she met with her, but Anna would never. A cold realization crept over me. Unless Claire lied, unless she forged, unless she stole my identity documents while she was in the house. "I need to stop the transfer," I said quickly. Silence. "Then I'm afraid that second one hasn't been approved, sir. It was flagged due to missing verification, but the first one has legally passed into their names." My legs almost gave out. I thanked her, if you could call that sound thanks, hung up and stared at the wall until it blurred. They took it. They took the home I built beam by beam. They went after the property I hid for emergencies. They forged documents. They involved my own lawyer. I walked to the window. Claire and Derek were outside, laughing by the water, sipping coffee like it was any ordinary morning. He wore my robe. She stood on my deck. And for the first time in my life, looking at my daughter felt like staring at a stranger who knew every way to wound me. They believed they won, but they didn't know everything. They didn't know about the appraisal appointment I had quietly canceled months ago, or the hidden clause tied to the primary deed that required in-person owner verification for any permanent sale. And they definitely didn't know about the buyer who had been begging for this house for 2 years. I sat down slowly at my desk. I opened my laptop. I stared at an email draft from a man named Jacob Yates, an investor I'd met through a friend. He'd made me an offer I refused twice. This house was everything to me, but now it was the rope my daughter used to try and pull me out of my own life. I typed 2 sentences. "Jacob, if you're still interested in purchasing both properties, call me immediately." I hit send. 10 seconds later, my phone rang. "Samuel," Jacob's voice was sharp with surprise. "You ready to talk numbers?" "I'm ready to sell," I said. "Both houses today." He whistled low. "Cash deal?" "Yes." "You sure these are legacy properties?" "Legacy." I almost laughed. "Just get your attorney," I said. "I want this finalized before noon." "On it," he replied. "I'll bring the paperwork." I hung up and sat with the silence. A strange calm washed over me. Not revenge, not spite, just clarity. They took something from me. I would take the chance from them. Downstairs, Claire and Derek walked inside, laughing about brunch. "Dad," Claire said brightly as she kicked off her sandals, "we're heading to the town office later to check on the transition. Do you want to come?" "No," I said. Derek smirked. "Too tired," I nodded slowly. Then I added, "I spoke to Banks and Title." Their laughter froze. Claire's smile twitched. "Oh," she said, "they told me the transfer closed." Her eyes flickered, just a flash like a curtain billowing from wind. Then she recovered. "Well, good. It means we're moving forward." Derek placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was possessive, not supportive. I studied their faces. Not remorse, not shame, just triumph. And yet they had no idea what was coming. "By the way," Claire said casually, "I'm thinking we'll repaint the house, something modern, and we'll probably move some of your old things into storage." My jaw clenched. Storage, my memories, my wife's furniture, the things I carried through decades of work and loss. Derek added, "We're planning to rent out the downstairs. Passive income." My heart squeezed. This house I built from sweat and sacrifice, now reduced to a revenue stream for people who hadn't held a hammer a day in their life. But suddenly, strangely, I felt light. They thought they'd taken the last thing I owned that mattered. They thought they'd outplayed me, but they didn't own anything yet, not legally, not physically, not for long. I walked past them, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Claire asked. "For a walk," I said, but that wasn't true. I was heading to the attorney's office. Jacob was already waiting at the curb. He stepped out of his car and shook my hand firmly. "Let's make this official," he said. "I want both properties," he added. "Beach house and the secondary." I nodded. "They'll be yours by noon." When we entered the office, the receptionist looked startled. "Mr. Pierce, we weren't expecting you. I need to execute a private sale," I said. Immediately, she blinked but didn't argue. Lawyers scrambled. Papers moved fast. Jacob signed. I signed. The beach house title deed, everything was transferred into his company's name. The second house, too. By the time the ink dried, I no longer owned either property. My daughter no longer owned anything either, because the transfer she engineered was null now. You can't transfer what no longer belongs to the original owner. The law was on my side this time. By the time I returned home, Claire and Derek were waiting on the porch. They looked smug, confident, victorious. "Dad," Claire said sweetly, "are you ready for the big transition?" I nodded. "Yes," I said calmly. "I think you'll want to sit down for this." "Why?" Derek asked, frowning. I held out the finalized sale agreement. Claire snatched it, skimmed the first line, then her face drained of all color. Her mouth fell open. Her hand shook violently. "Dad," she whispered, What did you do?" I looked her in the eyes, my daughter, who would have pushed me aside without a tear, and I said the words that turned her world upside down. "I sold both houses. This one and the one you didn't know existed." Her scream tore across the entire beach, and I stood there, the ocean roaring behind me, finally breathing. Claire's scream tore down the shoreline like a flare shot into the night. Birds lifted from the dunes. A neighbor's porch light blinked on. She stared at the papers in her trembling hands, eyes flicking over the sale agreement as if reading it a second time might change the ink. "Dad, you sold it," she whispered, voice cracking. "You sold the beach house." I didn't look away. "Yes," I said quietly. Her mouth hung open before twisting into rage. "You sold my house." The word hit me like a slap. My. As if owning my bloodline gave her deed rights, as if my sweat didn't pour into every beam. "Yes," I repeated. "I sold your fantasy." Derek stepped forward, chest puffed. "You had no right to undo the trust transfer." I turned to him slowly, painfully slowly. "There is no trust transfer," I said. "The papers you slipped in with the estate documents were fraudulent, filed without owner confirmation. They hold no legal weight." His face stiffened. "You think you're clever," he spat. "You think selling it fixes everything." "No," I said. "It prevents you from steamrolling the rest of my life." I watched the truth hit him like a fist. His confidence faltered. His jaw twitched. His eyes darted to Claire, who still shook like she'd touched an electric wire. "How could you do this?" she whispered. "You ruined everything." I swallowed. She wasn't devastated because she lost a memory. She was devastated because she lost a plan she'd built without me. A plan Derek had guided like a shadow puppeteer. Claire staggered back, gripping the porch railing. "All my plans, the renovation, the rental income, the business loan." She froze. I blinked. "Business loan?" I asked slowly. "What loan?" Her whole body stiffened. Derek threw her a warning glance. Too late. "What loan, Claire?" Her breath hitched. She clutched her stomach like the truth itself hurt. "Dad, we took an advance." My heart hammered in my chest. "What kind of advance?" "A collateralized one," she whispered. The world tilted. No, you used the beach house as collateral." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was a confession. I felt the air leave my lungs. Derek, seeing her flounder, stepped in. "It was temporary," he said sharply. "We were going to pay it back once the ownership transferred. It was a smart move." "A smart move." My voice was barely a whisper. "You took a multi-million-dollar loan against a house that wasn't yours. That you forced me to sign over, that you tried to steal." His jaw clenched. "Don't be dramatic." I stared at him. "Dramatic? My daughter committed bank fraud and her husband shrugged like we'd spilled wine on a rug." Claire suddenly grabbed my arm, nails digging into flesh. "Dad, please just reverse the sale. Sell it to me instead. Give us a chance to fix this." Her eyes were wild, desperate, fearful, and something inside me finally cracked open. Not anger, not rage, heartbreak. "You didn't come for the house," I said softly. "You came for the money." She flinched, tears filled her eyes. "No, Dad, that's not it." "Yes," I said, "it is." The truth settled between us like a cold wind. Derek exhaled sharply through his nose. "Let us cut the emotional nonsense," he said. "Just reverse the sale. We'll handle the bank. You'll move into the cottage. Everyone wins." I stared at him, stunned. He still believed he held leverage. He still believed he could control me. "No," I said firmly. That one word, that one syllable set everything on fire. Claire gasped as if slapped. "What do you mean no?" "I won't reverse the sale," I said. "It's final," her face contorted with panic. "You're ruining us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm saving myself." "You're choosing him over your own daughter," she spat, pointing at the sale papers like they were a murder weapon. "I'm choosing survival," I corrected. Derek's mask slipped. His politeness peeled away. Underneath was fury. "You old fool," he hissed. "You think this is over. You think you get to walk away after screwing us." I stepped closer, close enough to smell the bitterness on his breath. "Yes," I said, "because I didn't steal anything. I didn't forge signatures. I didn't take illegal loans. I didn't betray family." He recoiled. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," I whispered. "I regret not seeing who you really were sooner." Claire broke then. Her sobs hit like waves crashing against rocks. I expected to feel satisfaction. I didn't, only grief. Grief for the daughter I once loved. Grief for the debt she carried in secret. Grief for the years when she would run to me with scraped knees and muddy shoes. She wasn't that girl anymore, and I wasn't the man she thought she could control. She collapsed onto the steps, face in her hands. "Dad," she sobbed, "please, please help us." I knelt beside her. For a moment, I saw the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders, the girl who made sandcastles beside me, the girl who once picked seashells for her mother's grave. My eyes softened. "I will help you," I said quietly. "When you take responsibility for what you did, not before." Her breath shuddered. "But we'll lose everything." "You nearly took everything from me," I said softly. Derek grabbed her arm. "Claire, let's go." She didn't move. He tugged harder. "Now." She let him pull her away, stumbling behind him like someone dragged by fate. They reached the car. Claire turned one last time, tears streaking her cheeks. "Dad," she whispered, voice breaking with something between regret and resentment. "You weren't supposed to do this." I nodded once. "I know." Then I walked inside the house. My house, or rather, what used to be my house. Because tomorrow morning I would hand the keys to Jacob. But the weight of that loss was nothing compared to the weight I'd carried for years trying to keep a family that didn't want to be kept. And the real reckoning, the one involving banks, fraud investigators, and consequences, was still coming. And it would hit harder than anything I could deliver. Because they hadn't just lost a house, they had awakened a storm, and I was done being quiet. They came for statements the morning after I handed over the papers, detectives in navy suits, a woman from Bankson with a file so fat it looked like a small history book, Honor on the phone, voice thin and nervous. I sat at my kitchen table while they unpacked the story into neat pieces. "You initiated the private sale?" Detective Hargrove asked me. "Yes," I said. "My signature is here, my fingerprints. The money's cleared." He nodded, slow and careful. "You also want to press charges." I did, not because I wanted blood, because boundaries matter, because men can't steal a life from the old and call it progress. They took Claire's call record. They pulled Derek's transactions. They backed into Anna's emails and found drafts that didn't match the ones I saw. Fraud leaves fingerprints, not just on paper, but in rhythm, a hurried font, a duplicate signature, a timestamp that betrays an afternoon when the owner was upstairs, reading a book. Within 48 hours, the county froze accounts. Bankson put a temporary hold on any further transfers. Anna's office received a notice from the Bar Association. Derek avoided the detectives at first, a car in the driveway, engine warm. But you can only run so far when the law knows your name. They brought him in mid-afternoon. He walked out of the house like a man whose breath had been cut. Handcuffs chilled his wrists. Claire stood on the porch as they led him away, face wet, raw, not with anger now, but with a hollow I remember from her childhood, the moment a scraped knee becomes a scar. Dad, she said later, the word a small, fragile thing. I didn't think it would go this far. You didn't think, I replied. You took a loan you couldn't afford against a house you didn't own. You forged signatures. You lied to your own father. She flinched at the bluntness. I panicked, she whispered. We were drowning and I grabbed a rope. Not your rope, I said. You grabbed mine. The prosecutor's office moved faster than I expected, because once the bank flagged the transfer, the trail lit up. Emails, phone texts, a video of Derek at a notary, hands shaking as he pressed a pen into a palm I'd never signed with intent. They offered Claire a deal: admission, restitution, community service, mandatory financial counseling, and this part surprised me: family therapy. She took it. Not because she wanted to, but because it kept the worst from happening. Derek pleaded guilty to forgery and fraud. He received probation and restitution terms. The judge, an old man with steady eyes, looked at Claire and said something she will never forget. You are not beyond saving, but savings require work. Anna lost her license pending an ethics hearing. She thought the quick signatures would slide through because she'd known me for years. Trust is not a shield against greed. And then there was Jacob. I expected him to be a businessman first. He surprised me. He came to my kitchen with the kind of presence you can't buy. Small, plain, but with a clarity in his hands that said he'd weighed things. I bought it to keep it safe, he told me simply. Not for profit, not for flipping. I wanted to make sure no predatory move would hold this house hostage. He'd watched the paperwork clear, and his gut had told him to act fast. You could have held it forever, I said. I could have, he agreed. But you built this house. It belongs in the hands of someone who cares, not someone who treats it like collateral. He read my face like a man who'd watched storms. Samuel, he said, I'm offering you two things. 1, a check for the proceeds untethered, do whatever you need. 2, an offer. If you want, I'll hold the title in trust for 5 years. You keep residency as long as you like, I'll manage it. If Claire demonstrates she's turned things around in 5 years, we revisit ownership. I looked at Jacob until the salt air of the porch seemed to taste like possibility. You'd do that. I'd do that, he said. The world narrowed to the sound of waves. I thought of hammering rafters, of old photos, of the way Claire's laugh used to fill rooms. I signed. The weeks that followed were messy and human. Claire entered counseling and a repayment plan. She started at the cafe down the lane, sweeping floors, learning to balance books. Pride is hard work to rebuild. She did it in small, stubborn steps. Derek's probation required community service and a strict restitution schedule. He left a smaller man, a quieter one. Anna's hearing dragged on. There were apologies, thin legal. Consequences landed. Lessons, perhaps. I flew down to the county office to sign papers for Mara's guardianship. Caleb sat across from me, steady, tired. There was a tired smile on his face that felt like a promise. You want me to be her grandfather? I asked, because the word felt enormous. He nodded. She needs family, he said simply. And she already has you in a way. I thought of Adam, his handwriting, his trust, the ledger in that dusty envelope. What he'd tried to do in secret to protect a child he loved without asking for help. Tears came then, for mistakes, for love, for all the things we hide when we think we can bear them alone. Court dates, statements, restitution plans, they filled months like rain fills a barrel. But slowly the heat eased. Claire paid the first installment and texted me a picture, her sweaty hands from her shift, a crooked smile. Dad, she wrote, I'm working, I'm getting better. I answered with 2 words that felt like stitching. Keep going. Derek called once from a probation office. He said, I'll make it right, Samuel, I swear. I hoped he would. Jacob kept the house in his company's care. He wired funds for repairs, updated insurance, and left me a key with a note, for when you need it. Mara learned the rhythm of our small family: school, then homework on the porch, then bedtime stories about sandcastles and stubborn old men who built homes with their hands. Caleb and I walked the beach the first week of spring. Thank you, he said one evening, looking out at the ocean. For what? I asked. For taking her in, for not turning your back. I thought of Adam's last message. Please be her grandfather. I had been destroyed the night I thought my child was gone. But being destroyed didn't mean I ceased to exist. It meant there was room to rebuild. So I rebuilt, piece by piece. with paperwork and mediators, with therapy appointments and bank statements, with mornings where I taught Mara to tie her shoes and nights where Rebecca and I shared a quiet cup of tea. And when the storms came, as they always do, I had something steadier than a title. I had a decision, a simple one. I would not be owned by anyone, not my past, not my debts. Not even my daughter's betrayal. I would live my life intentionally. And if the sea taught me anything, it was this: houses are wood and stone. Families are made. You can sell a house. You cannot sell a promise you mean to keep. I stood on the porch one evening as the sun slid into the water, Mara asleep inside, Rebecca humming to herself in the kitchen. I closed my hand around Jacob's key. I felt the grain of the wood beneath my palm, and I whispered into the wind and into myself, "We will be all right."